saying that Telia won't be first across the finish line.
Oh. So I was thinking about something, and I was like, Ray's going to beat me to it. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another telecoms.com podcast. I'm sorry it's been so long. Everyone's been selfishly going on holiday, even though I came back. So especially Pierre, who went to, where is it, Abruzzo?
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to Italy as well, copying me as usual. And eating cannoli. Did you like the cannoli, Pierre?
I didn't go for the cannolis. I mostly went for it's called aragosta. It's like a lobster tail pastry looking thing. Yeah.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
I didn't have that, now I'm jealous. Okay, so we have, as ever, Jamie, who is eating and staring at his phone, as ever. And we've got Ray from Light Reading. This week we're going to be heading off by talking about some of the mergers and acquisitions action that's been happening since we last did a podcast. We're probably going to move on to some talk about 5G, because there's been a bunch of announcements in that area. And we're going to finish off talking about Huawei being victimised by various governments around the world. So, M&A. Ray, this was your...
Did you do the...
Oh, right. Sorry, Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're watching, then do something else. What was it?
if you're watching...
It has been a long time.
It has been a long time.
If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can also listen to the audio on SoundCloud or iTunes and vice versa.
Great.
Done.
Can we just pre-record that and you cut it in?
Yeah, that'd be really awkward. Yeah.
I always forget. Yeah. I know. Why is Jamie suddenly changing T-shirts halfway through the podcast? Okay. Can I go on now?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Jolly good. Ray, it's your bright idea to talk about M&A. So tell us about some of the mergers and acquisitions that have happened in our world.
So, there's been a couple of acquisitions announced this week, and not big money acquisitions. So maybe not grabbing as many headlines as normal, but significant ones. So there's Ericsson made an acquisition of a company called CNEX, and Ciena announced the acquisition of a company called Don River. So both CNEX and Don River are software companies, and the thing that kind of ties them together is that they enable greater levels of automation in network management. And that was the stated reason as well behind the stated strategy behind the acquisitions. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. And the reason for that is that there's a big drive for more automation in general, automated processes by the network operators. But it was noticeable also earlier this week, a senior executive from Orange speaking at an event I was at, the Operations Transformation Forum, which is run by Huawei, and there was an executive from Orange there who said that towards the end of this year, Orange will be sending out an RFP, or its request for proposal, for its 5G radio access network, and included in that RFP would be demands for the vendors responding to be able to meet specific process automation requirements, and then specifically against that as well to be able to provide interfaces to ONAP, which is the big open source automation platform that kind of was born within AT&T and then spun out. And the whole getting more software and knowledge that's going to enable greater automation is absolutely critical for the development of 5G networks. And I think we will see a new wave of M&A, I think, in the industry, and I think the unifying parts of it will be software to enable process automation for 5G. I think that will be the trend.
So everything you said, I don't question for 1 second. The only query I've got, given that we've known that virtualization, automation, softwareization has been going to be a critical component, why do you think they seem to be making some of their M&A moves a bit late in the day? Is that how you see it?
Well, it's taken a long time for companies to figure out exactly what capabilities they can develop in-house,
Right.
where they need to buy in, but most importantly, what the operators are going to need exactly.
Right.
You
Okay,
know,
so
there's
bit
been a
chicken
lot.
and egg.
Yeah, very much so. So you know, there was at the start of virtualization, or the move towards NFV, sort of 5-6 years ago. Basically, that was just a couple of years of companies saying, "Oh, we've turned what we were selling in hardware into a piece of software now," but that was kind of pointless. You know,
Unless you can join it all up.
well, exactly. It's really more about the cloud than it is about virtualization, and I think we'll hear more about that in the coming months as well. Because whatever the operators need from the vendors is software that is cloud. I mean, cloud native is the terminology. They need to be able to deploy it in their distributed cloud, so in their centralized data center facilities, but also in their forthcoming edge computing facilities. And they need for this software to be able to interact with all the, it's like buzzword bingo today, their orchestration software that's going to be able to determine in real time, you know, what resources are available, what services are happening, etc.
That's what ONAP's all about, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. But ONAP's a really big beast, and there's different ways to cut it. And ONAP is not the only option, despite what ONAP people would tell you, or supporters would tell you.
There's a big one that sort of Huawei's more into, I seem to remember.
I think Huawei's into to most things, but there's another one called OSM, which is being developed within Etsy, and that's Telefonica is a big supporter of that. But you know, BT and other operators are also supporting that.
Right.
But the key thing here is that, you know, a lot of the virtualized functions that were developed 4 years ago were pretty much a waste of time.
Okay.
Because all they were software versions of hardware elements, and they didn't really provide much of a gain. So we're now in the realms of acquisitions being made around companies that have maybe pivoted, another keyword, another bingo keyword,
Well, we like a good pivot.
or developed from scratch software capabilities that have been developed specifically for deployment within cloud architectures, and not just stuck on a server and
just sitting there,
and sitting there
unfindable
as another hardware element in the network.
in effect. Yeah.
So I'm expecting, and 5G will be the linchpin for this. These are all parts of 5G development strategies, but you're going to see a lot of acquisition, I think, software-based to enable some kind of process automation within network management.
So there must be a little bit of an arms race among the big vendors on that. If operators are starting, like you said, with Orange to explicitly ask for it, then Huawei, Nokia, Ericsson, dare we say ZTE, who are officially back in the races.
Yeah.
And maybe some other vendors are going to want to be seen to be offering the sort of best possible range of stuff. Hence, I mean, an M&A's the easiest way to do that. So do you think that's one of the reasons?
M&A is filling in the gaps, for sure. I mean, obviously, they will all claim to be able to do everything, as the big companies always do. But we're now
end-to-end solutions.
Indeed. Well, except end-to-end is not really what the big operators who with the big money. That's not what they want. But we're getting to the point now where it's going to be sorting the wheat from the chaff, and those who say they can do something will soon be found out if they can't.
Yeah.
And that would be pretty. We're coming to crunch time for early decisions around 5G deployments, and we've got to remember as well, and I'm going to be banging on about this every time I'm on this podcast and every time I write on Light Reading.
I think you just ensured you're not going to be on it very much.
Yeah, about how this all ties into a 5G big picture, because 5G is not just about a souped-up radio access network and some whizzy new smartphones. There's tons of elements that all need to be brought together to make 5G work, and SDN and NFV and AI-enabled analytics and edge computing, DevOps as a process. All of these are critical elements in that 5G. It's like a puzzle, and all these puzzle pieces need to be fitted together to make the 5G big picture. And this is companies basically looking at that 5G big picture and going, right, we've got this and that, but actually that we've got a hole there in the puzzle and we need to fill it with an acquisition.
And are we saying with this puzzle analogy that unless you get all the pieces right, there ain't no 5G happening.
Not the full version of 5G.
Right.
So I mean, in terms of the ultimate 5G, where you're able to deliver services such as remote surgery that require incredibly high
Good old
bandwidth.
remote surgery.
Well,
Love
I mean that because that's an example that everybody will have heard of, and of course
Yeah.
the services that will need to be delivered will probably include a lot of services that people haven't thought of yet.
Yeah.
Hologram-based conferencing, etc., where you need incredibly low latency, incredibly high bandwidth, but you also need real-time transactions of resources to make it all happen. And this is where all of the, you've got quantum computing in there as well. And I've just realized one element that I haven't included in my 5G puzzle. But there are so many different elements that all need to be brought together. So if you've got a few of these elements, you'll be able to deliver some higher speed enhanced mobile broadband. You can do that with some of the elements, but if you want to go the full hog
Totally.
and deliver, industrial, IoT, the connected cars, etc., you're going to need to bring all of this together. But you don't need to have it all yourselves. This is about making sure you're covered for all of the different elements you need, ticking the boxes, but some of that can come from partnerships.
And yeah, I mean, it occurs to me that they announced this sort of non-standalone 5G like a year and a half ago. I seem to remember at Mobile World Congress, and that's an example of a sort of incremental thing. So non-standalone can get you some enhanced mobile broadband and a few things, but only standalone with the sort of full, all the necessary.
Well, we're still in
augmentations of
release
the core.
15 in terms of standards. Release 16 is still to come, and that's going to include a lot of the specifications for some of these,
Do you know when that
next gen.
When that's going to happen?
I think it's mid 2019.
Okay. But the other thing that occurs to me, to again go with your jigsaw puzzle analogy, is operators, depending, you get some broad brush operator groups that want to be all things to all people, but presumably just as you can get some degree of 5G going without all the pieces of the jigsaw, you could actually make a strategic choice to go, no, we're just going to be in this area.
Absolutely.
So we don't need to bother with all this other cleverness, or at least not the...
Yeah, it's all about business plans and strategies, and it's going to be a very tough gig, and this is why we'll end up seeing consolidation in the operator space as well, for tier 2 and tier 3 operators to be able to either invest in or bring together all of the capabilities they need to deliver a full suite of 5G. It's just going to be beyond their financial means.
Yeah.
So
talking about financial means, one thing that struck me about the Ericsson acquisition was that Ericsson was doing an acquisition. It hasn't done much M&A that I've been aware of for a while.
I think that only goes to show that they've reached a point in their turnaround where they are now filling in the gaps, the bits that are missing in what they've decided they really want to do now.
Yeah, they're losing their belt one notch.
Absolutely. So, I think probably next week at IBC will probably be the announcement of the finalisation of their divestment of the majority stake in their media assets, which are going to be... what's it going to be called? They've already announced what the company... MediaKind?
Oh, yeah. MediaKind. Yeah, that didn't do it for me, if I'm honest. What's kindness got to do with it? As opposed to media bastard or something. Anyway, who am I? I'm not a branding expert.
Really?
As is evidenced by my own personal brand being so
Yeah,
poor.
but also you've got to remember that this acquisition was not breaking the bank.
No, definitely. And it was a private company that they said didn't even tell us what they spent. Any guesses?
No, but I would say less than 100 million because they didn't have to announce it.
Right.
And there's certain thresholds.
Right. I mean, you can get any old company for about 50 million these days, can't you?
You can get some really great companies.
So what I was going to say, my segue about Ericsson and 5G and all that stuff, is they've been banging on about a fair bit of other stuff this week. So there's that CNEX. I was wrestling with things like Syncs, and that just wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
CENX is the acronym. Is it an acronym? Probably stands for something. Anyway.
I can't remember.
And they announced that they tarted up their core RAN thing, Ericsson radio system, and made it better. I'm struggling off the top of my head to remember how they made it better, even though I wrote the story. But that was one announcement, and then they also announced that an extended partnership with Juniper and another company called ECI to sort of help out with their end-to-end offering, i.e. the backhaul side of things, which isn't a strength of theirs, is it?
No, it isn't. So they've got the front haul covered, but Ericsson needed some help in the packet and optical elements of the backhaul.
What the difference between front haul and backhaul is?
Front haul is the transport connection between. This is when you have a disaggregated radio access network, and the radio head and the baseband processing are not together,
right.
And you have lots of radio heads that are served by pooled baseband resources.
Right. And you've got to get between
but you've got to have incredibly low latency between the pooled baseband and the radio heads. So that's a transport link, much of which is going to be over fibre, but could be delivered over microwave as well. That's the front haul, and then the back haul is the transport from the centralised baseband pool. Going back further into the network, that's the backhaul, and together they're called Anyhaul.
Do you know what I noticed? You use that, and I'd never heard.
I
of
need
Anyhaul
to get a
before.
life.
I was going to say
really
something
need to get
else.
a life.
There's Anyhaul.
Why can't it just be Hall?
Call?
Very good. Look at you swearing. You have to bleep yourself.
I know. People know.
So they did that as well, and then also there's.
And that was really interesting, actually, because the choice of those companies 18 months ago.
Yeah.
If you'd have said who's Ericsson going to go with for their to team up with for router and optical networking capabilities.
You've been appealing to a US audience.
I have.
For too
I've been. Cultural imperialism has snagged me a long time ago, but it would have been Cisco and Ciena, and now they've chosen Juniper and ECI Telecom.
Right.
And I think that's really, really telling.
Well, that Cisco thing's just dead in the water, isn't it?
It is dead in the water, but also there was actually on light reading. We gave the Ericsson guy we interviewed gave the reason why they haven't gone with Cisco, and that was really interesting as well. So I recommend checking that out.
Right.
But ECI,
my bad. I should have read.
the ECI part.
You're not going to tell us. You're just going to plug the article.
Very much so. It's a teaser.
Go read it.
But the ECI selection is really interesting because actually it's a validation of the focus and strategy that company's had for the last 12 months, which is focusing its R&D to develop optical capabilities that are specifically suited to 5G networks. And now it's paid off.
Right.
Because they're just going to get extra sales by Ericsson saying, ECI know what they're doing in 5G transport.
And in
It's a
hindsight,
slam
having a
dunk.
strategy 5 years ago of gearing your product portfolio towards 5G seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah, but nobody knew what to develop.
Well, so doing it well is
Yeah,
another matter.
doing it well and doing it properly to the
Yeah.
point where Ericsson, one of the biggest 5G networking companies in the world, says, yes, this company knows what they're doing. That is
That's an endorsement, isn't it?
they'll still be bathing in champagne in Tel Aviv.
Oh, it's an Israeli company. Is it?
Yeah.
Very nice people.
Didn't even know that. I'm so at my job. What else has been going on? There's been loads of other 5G announcements. I could name a few. Like again, Ericsson's been palling up with both Intel and Qualcomm on the sort of chip side. And Jamie, there was a recent bit of action going on in was it Sweden, Finland, somewhere around there.
I'm assuming you're talking about the
Telia.
Telia story.
Yeah.
Yeah, Finland.
There we go. That's what I meant.
So they just think they're gonna. I mean, they snuck through the peloton. They haven't really been. I mean, I don't know if I've just missed it, but Telia for me hasn't been a company or a telco that's been particularly obnoxiously bragging about their 5G capabilities. Have they?
That's not a Nordic way to brag, is it?
They've been talking about it and pointing out that Telia is essentially the Docomo of Europe. They're always ahead of the game.
So they're going to turn on the off switch essentially early 2019. Turn the on switch on. Sorry,
Flick the on switch.
Flick the on switch.
Switch it off. Yeah.
and they're going to build a 2G network.
They're going to go off and go, no, on.
Oh shit!
I mean, it surprised me.
Nothing works.
Just the Finns getting it. Well, I mean, now you've said it. I mean, it perhaps shouldn't have surprised me. But I just thought that it was like the majority of Europe was just sluggish.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I didn't see anyone turning on 5G in 2019. And
it says something about Europe that Ray says they're the Docomo of Europe.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. No, I mean, obviously,
But
historically, Finland with Nokia and all that sort of thing, and Sweden have been ahead of the game. But yeah, I'm with you. They haven't made so much noise more latterly.
It's also not a massive market as well. You know,
No.
if you look at sort of like the geographical challenges of turning on in Helsinki compared to something like London. I mean, the
But
city is.
you've got to
3-4
remember
times.
the R&D smarts within. You know,
Yes, yeah.
there's a hell of a lot of mobile knowledge in Espoo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Tampere.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so they reckon they're going to be early 2019. They're going to be up there with the big boys around the world. San Marino,
Slightly behind San Marino.
San Marino, slightly behind San Marino.
San Marino Grand Prix.
Tim think they're going to turn on ASAP, basically. So they said, what did they say? So they finished their the rollout of small cells around the city. They've done all their testing on the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum. I think it was 3.5. Was it 28? I can't remember. But then they're finishing their first phase of rollout across the autumn, and then they're going to turn on in San Marino, which essentially just looks like a living lab. You know, they're moving out of the R&D centre in Turin, and they're just going to essentially go, right, okay, we've got a city-state essentially of
How about the Vatican?
33,000
Yeah.
people.
So, are you saying that Telia won't be first across the finish line?
Oh,
So I was thinking about something, and I was like, Ray's going to beat me to it. Yeah, well
It's his
done.
job. He's VP of puns.
Well done.
yeah, but it just looks like it's a good opportunity for Telecom Italia. You know, you've got this
Yeah.
tiny little state where if things go tits up,
And they need some good news. Don't
yeah,
they?
they need some good news. But if things go tits up, you only got 30,000 people to complain, so it's
Yeah.
not really that bad. You know, it's better than having 30 million people complaining in Italy.
Certainly, well, maybe that's
Um,
one of the reasons why Finland's doing it. They haven't
Yeah,
got that many
yeah.
dudes either. They've got the challenge of sort of IoT reindeer, but other than that, they're good.
But yeah, so there's a lot of smaller countries getting there.
Yeah,
I think there are live 5G connections now in Lesotho, the
Is that-
landlocked country in South Africa.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Is there? I was going to say,
Two-
where is that? I
Two
got no
enterprise
idea.
customers have live commercial 5G
wait,
connections.
Is that the one? Is that the country? It's the only country in the world that only has, is it one border and not an island?
Just bang inside South Africa.
Because it's entirely bordered by South Africa all the way around.
By one
isn't it?
country,
It's
yeah.
bordered by one country and it's not an island.
Well,
Well, how that
technically,
works.
San Marino is also...
San Marino's not an island.
No, but it's a
Yeah.
state. It's
But
not a country,
borders.
is it?
Right.
It's
Is it a
a
country?
micro-state, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Microstate.
Ah,
There we
So I
go.
think it's like it's
Like
not a
Vatican or
country.
something.
right. Okay.
Lesotho is. Well, now these things happen historically. You'd think the big country.
What
just
about the
swallow it up.
Vatican? The Vatican, that's a state.
Yeah. It's
No,
not a
it's
country, though.
it's not a country.
No? Oh, it's not a country. Okay, fair enough.
City-state, like Singapore.
Mm.
Talking about Tim, bit of a tangent. That was quite a funny story I wrote yesterday. Oh, by the way, talking about Tim, shout out to Tim Skinner, who I went for a drink with last Friday. Hi, Tim. We miss you. Tim is getting dissed by Vivendi. So back
What,
at
Tim Skinner?
no, not.
Oh,
not
right.
Tim. You're all right, Tim. Vivendi hasn't got a problem with you. Back in May, there was a sort of boardroom battle between them and an active investor group called Elliott, and Vivendi lost. And now, amazingly enough, they're bitching and moaning about how rubbish Tim is now that they're not in charge, which I thought was it's just one of those more transparently self-interested bits of moaning. And then I thought what was also telling.
I'm all right with them moaning, to be honest with you. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm just saying it's transparent. Oh, have a moan. I'm just saying that their motives are not very subtle.
But the business model that they put in sort of like in front of investors and shareholders was far more sustainable for Tim than the Elliott, let's pump and dump the share price,
Right.
offload a load of assets, get a load of free cash in, push the share price up, and we'll sell off, because that's their business model. It's to look at undervalued companies where the share price is below what it should be, pump it over 6 to 12 to 18 months,
Yeah.
and then offload the shares.
Get out.
You know, why long-term institutional investors thought
Yes.
Elliott was going to be a good shout.
Why would people be greedy?
No, but institutional investors that are in it for the big gains over 20 years. It's
I wonder how many of them there are.
Well, they may be looking to cash out and put their money in IBM or Warren Buffett's company instead.
Berkshire
UBM.
Hathaway.
Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
Berkshire Hathaway. How much of that do you own?
I think one share is like $5,000 or something. Maybe more. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry,
Sorry.
my fault.
Amazon, man. First, second $1 trillion company by market
Amazon, yeah.
The only way is down.
cap. Well, there is that. But then people have been saying that about Amazon for about 20 years. And
Well, saying that, I wouldn't listen to him. He bought BT just before it crashed.
did you? Is that true, Pierre? Stop looking at your phone.
No, I bought it when there was the Italian scandal.
Oh, okay.
And then
But
it went
then-
down further again
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
And
Just wait and see.
and they still haven't got a new CEO.
Uh,
But we don't
Jamie,
reckon
how's
it'll
your
be Stephen
crypto?
Well,
I haven't
coming
actually
along?
looked at it in a while, to be
Okay.
honest.
The new favourite for or the new name in the frame for the BT CEO job is Ronan Dunn.
Yeah. I
Sorry,
read that
the
up.
stock price. I was just so way off. I just wanted to go back to it. It's $321,000 for one stock.
Oh,
Never
well,
mind.
Berkshire
Really?
Hathaway.
Yeah,
Bloody hell.
yeah.
One
He
share.
never.
He does.
cut
He's
it.
never split them.
No.
Fair
Anyway,
enough.
sorry.
Yeah, Ronan Dunn. I saw that as well. A little rumour. Who Ronan Dunn, for anyone who's forgotten, used to head up O2 UK and then gone off to Verizon to head up their consumer side, was it? Something like that. And he might have thought he'd get the top gig when Lance Armstrong or whoever used to be in charge. What's his name? I forget. Some American sounding name anyway. Left, but who was it who got it
Hans.
instead? Hans Vesberg got it. So maybe he's thinking, sod it, I'll go for BT, like a consolation prize. So he might have given it slightly more thought than that. I'm selling his thinking a little bit short there. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, so that was I thought that Vivendi thing. I'm with you. They may well bitch and moan.
Also, they don't play rugby in North America, and he's a massive rugby fan.
Is
He'd
he?
love to come back to London and be nearer to Twickenham.
Well, they do play it. They just didn't play it very well.
There is that.
Ooh.
The Canadians, they're rubbish. They may be very friendly people, but they're rubbish at rugby.
They still make it to the World
I
Cup.
think the Canadians
But then
going to be
any
pretty upset that
decent-
you're.
yeah.
Conflating.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's like you're
They are-
lumping
No,
lumping
you
Canada
second
in with
largest
the
country
US.
in the
You
world.
said North America. You know, it's a continent of more than one country.
Fair enough.
Yeah, does Mexico have a rugby team? Probably not.
No,
No.
the US has a rugby team. It's very big in certain states, especially around the northeast.
Yeah, the sort of Ivy League kind of places.
Just an FYI.
Connecticut, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
where they don't have to wear suits of armour
What were we
to
talking
run
about?
around.
I think we were talking about Telecom Italia.
We were. This is a colossal tangent. I'll bring it back. My bad. The other funny thing, I agree with Jamie that Vivendi's entitled to bitch and moan, and I think we all agree that their motivations are quite transparent. The other thing that was telling, the CEO of Tim Remains, this chap Amos Genish, who was installed by Vivendi, and the person who issued the sort of counter statement to Vivendi's moaning was not him. They got the chairman, someone with an Italian name that I forget.
That would be par for the course. So.
Yeah, Trapattoni. No, that's a football guy. Anyway,
But they can't get rid of him though, can they? Because he's the fourth CEO in 2 years.
Well, that was the other funny thing about the original.
When you've had that many, why not?
yeah.
have a
Yeah,
fifth?
why not? Just roll a dice again. The other funny thing about the original Vivendi bitch, they basically only bitched about two things. One was the share price, which is apparently down 35% since they stopped being in charge, and they're entitled to bitch about that. But the other one is they just started moaning about rumours. They said there's too many rumours, including the CEO leaving. And I was thinking, well, firstly, us as journalists, we know that normally companies disregard rumours. So it's a bit disingenuous for them to suddenly start talking about rumours as the most important thing in the world. And secondly, for all we know, those rumours have been perpetuated by some kind of dark ops people from Vivendi anyway. So it just struck me as an incredibly weak thing for them to base their whole public statement on. I just thought it was a poor effort. Granted, while they're still entitled to do it, I think they could have done a better job. So yeah, that the chairman of Tim came back and just went, "Oh, shut up." And I think he's basically, his countercuss was, "Look, we're implementing your plan anyway, so you can't moan." So that was quite funny. I quite like the soap opera.
Yeah, because that was
side
one
of
of the conditions of keeping Ganesh, how we pronounce it, on. He said, you can't ditch the Tim 2020 vision
Quite.
or whatever it's called. That's my baby. If you get rid of that strategy, I'm out the door as well.
Yeah.
So I think Elliot backtracked quite
Well,
considerably.
quite. So
when he started threatening.
this chairman had a point then. That it's all very well for Vivendi to moan, but they're doing Vivendi's plan, so you can't have it both ways, lads. And he made some little cuss about noise coming from the other side of the Alps, which I thought was quite funny.
Well,
it's all
see-
getting quite bitchy and petulant.
Thingamabob isn't used to not being in charge, though, is he? Is it
Prefontaine. How do you pronounce it?
Arnold
Oh, yeah.
Prefontaine or something like that.
That'll do.
He's just not used to being
Yeah.
second string or sat at the back of the room, and
He's used to being the main man,
and having to raise his hands and talk only when spoken to,
or having to
So-
leave the grounds of Versailles Palace.
yeah.
Yeah. So there we are. That's okay. I think we're coming to the final bit, talking about corporate intrigue. The whole thing of Huawei and ZTE, I suppose, now that it's back on its feet, being banned from everything, continued rolling in the time since we last did the podcast, and it officially got banned from everything to do with sort of public work in Australia, which seemed to come out of the blue. It also coincided with yet another change of prime minister there. They change prime ministers more often than Tim does CEOs. And then after that, there was a rumour.
Do you know there is a Twitter account that every 15 minutes in Australia it updates you with the time, the weather, and who the current prime minister is.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I read it. It's a complete tangent, but I read an interesting bit of analysis that someone says that this is actually this constant chopping and changing is actually a sign of democracy functioning properly, because every time a PM screws up, he gets turfed out, which you could argue is democracy functioning properly, as opposed to someone staying in regardless of how useless they are.
They're like Chelsea.
Chelsea. I was going to say Venezuela, but yes, Chelsea. Yeah, and then there was a rumor which is unsubstantiated, and nothing's happened since I wrote up the rumor, that Japan was thinking about following suit as well. And what I took from that is there's probably a fair bit of Trump, probably a fair bit of Hillary Trump influence, right? Sort of putting pressure on Western allies, because he's already sort of demonising them to a certain extent. But maybe there's also just a sense of, look, because Huawei's always saying, look, no one's caught us doing anything, no one's got any evidence. What have we actually done that we're getting all this aggro? But I think people are just erring on the side of caution. They go, look, Huawei, I'm sure you're fine, but we're just not going to take the risk. Especially with the Chinese premier becoming more sort of authoritarian and having greater power over everything in China.
It's a very brave move from the Aussies. I think something like 30% of their exports
Yeah.
go to
Massive
China.
exposure, massive
It's
economic
huge.
exposure.
It's huge. Get any retaliation could cripple their economy.
Yeah, and presumably Chinese will be on the phone going, what's going on?
Yeah, buy our telecoms or we're not going to buy your shrimp.
Shrimp. That's their only export, isn't it?
Yeah, only yeah, and hats with corks hanging off them. It's the only thing they export.
And unique marsupials.
Camels. They bring a lot of camels to Saudi Arabia, not to China. Sorry, just most
You're right,
camels
Pierre.
in Saudi
Pierre's
Arabia
been
come
in
from
here too long.
Australia.
Did you have a dodgy cannoli one?
No, but did you know that
Most camels,
from Saudi Arabia, the Middle East come from Australia?
what they get reared in Australia and
Yes.
shipped over to Saudi Arabia? I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yeah,
That's one of the more unlikely trade routes.
exactly.
Well, goddamn, you learn something new every day. Now be quiet for quite a long time. Ray,
Yes.
we've covered this before, but this keeps growing, this sort of Huawei thing. I know we haven't picked a team. We're not on their side or anti them, but given the sort of weight of evidence and all that sort of thing, what do you think's behind all this? Do you think there might be some evidence, or do you think it's just paranoia, or what?
I think it's politics and paranoia, and a certain amount of playing safe, because if you hear time and time again that there's a security threat, then in the end that's going to kind of drill like a worm into your brain.
Yeah.
And then if other people are also telling you, don't worry, if you go down this route, there's plenty of other options that are already working really well in this country, so you
Why
won't be
take the risk?
undermining the country's communications future. And also, I think the guy who is now the new prime minister was one of the people
Yeah. who signed it
pushing
off.
for. Yeah, that's right. So it all kind of. I don't think any good will come of it. I really don't.
And do you feel a lot of it is just them being a proxy in the sort of greater geopolitical aggro between like the US
I
and
think
China
a bit,
and
but I
stuff?
think we need to remember that, Huawei also hasn't helped itself over the years with some of its business and strategic tactics. So there's plenty of evidence, not of security holes in code or anything being put in, but plenty of evidence that they don't always play by the rule book.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think
certainly
that
in
was
the past.
something that was something that's pulled up by that GCHQ group recently, wasn't it? There was quite a few areas that they turned around and said, we don't think you're incredibly dodgy on this evidence, but there's certain areas that you are acting pretty irresponsibly. Because I think there was one, they were incorporating some open source code
No, it was
into products.
Yeah, it was Wind River code, where the support for the code runs
That's right.
out in 2020, and therefore
But the products
what
are-
happens after that, there won't be automatic software upgrades, and
Yes.
that could become a security risk. So that's kind of just a little bit of laxness in terms of
I
still
think it was more
incorporating. Yeah,
irresponsibility
that was
than anything else.
not great process, but. What is eaten? It's not that kind of thing that gets into the minds of these politicians. These politicians are thinking, that somebody in China will flick a switch and the entire Australian infrastructure will go down. That is the image put in their heads, and that is what they are reacting to. No matter how many experts sit in front of them and go, "That's not how it works." That is how it thinks, because as we know, sticks. This is how the mainstream media work. You put on the front page such and such, is a liar and a thief, and a week later on page 2 they go, "Oh, sorry about that headline, it was wrong last week." The entire country still thinks they're a
Well,
liar
that's also
and a thief.
sort of Trump's whole Twitter policy is just show
Right.
something off and another.
Absolutely.
So do you think, Ray, it is at all plausible that if we assume the worst possible motives on the part of Huawei, which we don't, but for the sake of argument, that they could put in processes such that if the Chinese decided to get medieval and seriously start being aggressive, they could just flick a switch and start controlling stuff?
No, I think that's
it can be-
fanciful. I think it's. I think the main point here is that because of the tensions between East and West, and because if Huawei was not the biggest provider of communications infrastructure technology in the world, this situation would not be happening. So there's also kind of global trade and there's this whole 5G. Who's ahead in 5G?
Yeah.
Get a frickin' grip, everybody. It doesn't matter
Right.
who is ahead in 5G
Yeah.
in 2018. You just need to,
This isn't a space race.
That's right.
Although that didn't matter in hindsight either.
Right now, that is not a big deal, but people are making it a big deal. Basically, all of these companies are really no different from each other. Everybody's dodgy in some ways. All the major infrastructure companies will have agents of governments working within them. It just happens. It's a reality.
Yeah.
But some of them are better at hiding it than others,
Right.
and most of them don't even know that these people are there. So if you are doing anything that is digital, then basically it's a risk to a certain degree.
Talking about mega deals, do you see the rumours of mergers in China?
Aye.
I mean, if that
China
comes
Telecom
through,
and China
Yeah,
Unicom.
yeah,
Unicom and Telecom.
scalable spending. Sorry, economies of scale and buying
But they still
power.
wouldn't be as big as China Mobile, would they, in terms of subscribers?
900 million. I mean, that's one thing. You say, right, okay, I'm merging two of the largest telcos in the world to create a subscription base of 480 or 490 million subscribers,
Still half
and
from
I'm
the
not.
other.
I'm still not even going to be the biggest in my own country.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
But then you're creating a duopoly, aren't you?
yeah, essentially. But
Mm.
Chinese don't really care
they're
about that, do
they're
they?
not bothered about competition. That's all. Cool. All right. I think we run out of time. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks
to
for
everyone
covering
listening.
25 different topics.
That's good. A good meandering podcast.
There's plenty of meandering.
Including the current state of rugby in North America.
And that, if we're talking meandering, that was an Oxbow Lake.
We're tangent pros. Thanks for bearing with us, and make sure you join us for the next one.